Hey, everybody. Fix my camera. Good day. Happy full moon. It's the full moon in Virgo today. And I'm going live a little bit late. I was going to go live this morning, but things shifted. So here I am. And today I want to celebrate the first day of Warrior Goddess Wild. Hello. So, for those of you that are on live, feel free to share in the chat where you're tuning in from, what your name is. And if any of you are watching the recording later, hi. My name's Heather Ash, and we are talking about the Warrior Goddess Wild Challenge. And today's day 1. If you haven't joined the challenge, you are so free to do so. It is free. So no cost at all. Just go to wildwitchywise.com. Hey, Martin. Yay. So this is the URL, wildwitchywise.com. You don't have to put the www. Hello. Yeah, so just put Wild Witchy Wise, and when you sign up, you will get the first day's lesson, which is today. We go from March 7th through March 13th. There's little lessons every day, videos. Oh, I'm going to sneeze 1 second. Allergies. Oh my gosh, we're in juniper season. And I had stopped sneezing before I got on the call, and now I'm sneezing again. So, hey, Anita, Sue, Sarah. Hello, and welcome to Warrior Goddess Wild. So, again, if you haven't joined, please feel free to wildwitchywise.com. What the challenge is for this time, hey, Audrey, is around how do we incorporate play and pleasure into our days? Hey, Rihanna, how do we honor that each of us has this wild part of us that needs to express and have adventures and try new things and be playful? And so often, especially when our life gets challenging or when we are working on big projects, we start to grind down into seriousness. We start to become more and more adult-like. Come here, dog. Come say hi. And in that seriousness, what happens is we end up closing. We close to our intuition, we close to our creativity, we close to possibility. And so often what we need to do is to give ourselves permission to play. And I talked about this a little bit on the live yesterday, that this idea of giving ourselves permission is not the permission to be irresponsible, but the permission to take many breaks during the day, to take time off regularly, so that we can bring in that sense of joy, of play, of exploration, of looking for new ways of being in relationship to ourselves and others. So we need to take the time to really ask ourselves, number 1, and this is our question for Warrior Goddess Wild today, is what brings you pleasure? So that's our first question, to get really curious. What does bring us pleasure? Shoosh, there goes my dog out the door. So yesterday I shared about one of a really beautiful moment I had up on the land this weekend, which was leaning against a tree, reading a book in this beautiful field. And the wind was blowing through the grass. And every once in a while, I would put my book down and just let myself rest into this incredible moment of beauty that was in front of me. And that is one of my favorite pleasures, is getting to be tucked in someplace and reading a book. So as we have more and more folks coming in, welcome. Please go ahead and share where you're tuning in from, share your name, and what brings you pleasure. So that's our first question. And while we answer this question, hello, I'm just going to go get a Kleenex. I'll keep talking probably. Okay. Hello. All of my friends that are in Austin probably know what cedar fever is because you guys were dealing with it in January and December. Hey, Seema. Davis, Elk Grove. I went to UC Davis, so hi. Hey, Michelle. Linda from Ontario, Massachusetts. Hey, Rihanna. Hey, Giovanni. Good to see you. Good to have you here. So I'm navigating cedar fever. Cedar fever is allergies from juniper/cedar trees. So if I sneeze, that's why. Yay. So what is it that keeps us from having pleasure? Yeah, exactly, Sarah. In the UK, I love to go for long walks in the woods, swimming, water play, my grandbaby, and knitting. Hi, Zaza. Influencing someone's life. Exactly, Seema. Yeah. Yeah. Hey, Heather. Yeah. Dancing, hiking, and sitting in the middle of nature and writing. I love it, Audrey. Hi, Leah from North Carolina. Welcome. Yay. So today we are talking about the Warrior Goddess Wild Challenge. It starts today. It's 7 days of little videos and tasks to do to help us to return to our wild selves. And part of that is returning to our coming back into more play and more pleasure in our life, which brings us into creativity and intuition and just more joy in general. Yeah, nude bathing, yay, garden, animals. Yeah, places where we influence ourselves and inspire ourselves, creating. Hey, Heather, Linda, fear keeps us from having pleasure. Yeah, in your information. Yeah, in your idea. So, what else keeps us from pleasure? What are the things that, sometimes what can keep us from pleasure is guilt, is this idea of I have to get everything done on my list first, and then I can perhaps have some pleasure. Yeah, Sarah, absolutely. Doing craft projects and making things, that is a beautiful pleasure. Making something with our hands, putting our love, our attention, our energy into something. Mhm. Yeah. And sometimes it's just another thing that can keep us from doing things that are really pleasurable is just the places we can get distracted. So we can get our attention hooked elsewhere. And so instead of doing something that's really pleasurable, like actively doing something that's pleasurable, we get hooked into doing something that is not as supportive of our being. It may be helping the time go by, perhaps, but it's not actually bringing us pleasure. Yeah. So this place of continuing to settle into creating more space to explore what brings me pleasure now. This is something I talk to a lot of folks about, that sometimes we get so caught up in raising kids, of having our job and running our businesses and keeping our homes and all the just day-to-day things, that we start to forget what it means to have pleasure in our lives. Yeah. Giovanni, dancing in nature, reading books, painting, preparing herbal medications. Love it. Meditation with my kids. Beautiful. I love it, Giovanni. Yeah. So making more space for pleasure means, one, consciously knowing what we like, what brings us pleasure now. And I always go back to the five senses, that if we think about what smells bring me pleasure, what tastes bring me pleasure, what sights bring me pleasure, what sounds bring me pleasure, what touch brings me pleasure, and that we regularly then do things that enliven our senses, that help wake our senses up. So whether that's putting on your best gown or pants and going out to go for a walk. I do that every once in a while. I live right by a cemetery and I take the dog for a walk. And every once in a while, I'll just get really dressed up and go walk my dog. It's great. It's so fun. So that's part of playing with pleasure, is what brings us joy, what lights us up, and also what informs and incites our senses. So to bring into your sphere more smells that you love, to connect with your skin of what is pleasurable to your skin, to keep opening your senses so that your senses become more and more attuned to pleasure. And that just takes practice, practice and permission. So the practice is doing things every day that bring pleasure and really taking them in. Those little rituals that we do of making tea in the morning, of washing our hands, of putting our shoes on and stepping outside and smelling the air. All of those can be ways that we reconnect with our senses and with our pleasure, bring ourselves back into this moment. And yeah, Sarah, I agree. I try to get things done that need my attention, then after I can do my pleasurable things. So that can work, but it can also backfire, as you probably know. So sometimes the backfiring is if you only do the things that need your attention, there's an endless list of things that are going to need our attention. The to-do list never ends. There's sometimes this illusion that we have that if I um, get everything done on the list, then I can have the pleasure. And so that's one of the things in the Warrior Goddess Wild challenge that I want all of us to undo, me included, is to undo any places where we're saying, I have to put my pleasure off. And so I then need to then grind down and be really serious and push through things to make things happen. And instead to learn how to take actions while we're also staying attention to our bodies, paying attention to our hearts, paying attention to our shoulders, paying attention to bringing pleasure in, even when we're doing really mundane or boring tasks, or even when we're getting the things done that need to be done, whatever those things are. Yeah. Beautiful. Yeah. Do your best to get some pleasure in between. Yeah, exactly. And weave it in. There's so much joy of learning how to give ourselves permission to get up from the computer and go smell an essential oil or go have a cup of tea and just take 1 minute to feel the warmth of the cup and breathe and drop our shoulders down our back, to take a shower and then take time afterwards to put lotion into our skin and to really feel how happy our skin is to be getting some attention, to be getting moisture, to go for a walk. And instead of listing all the things that we need to do next, to feel our feet against the ground, to connect to the wind, to connect to the air. So in the Warrior Goddess Wild Challenge today, again, we're in day 1 of the Warrior Goddess Wild Challenge. It is March 7th through March 13th, so 7 days. And if you're not part of the challenge yet, go ahead and join. There's a short video overview of the theme of the day. There is then a PDF that you can download and different tasks to play with every day. So it gives us support and information about how we are in relationship with that wild, creative child part of ourselves, is how I think about it. The places that we have put agreements on top of our wild so that we've domesticated ourselves to behave, to adult properly, to make sure everybody likes us, to do it perfectly. The places that we dampen down our energy. And there's often many agreements that we have that we don't even realize that we're carrying with us, that we can undo to get back to our wild, to get back to that core, creative, wonderful part of ourselves that we need. And part of why I'm so passionate about working with the Warrior Goddess Wild work is that we really need that wild, untamed, creative, exploratory part of ourselves to come back online, because we need that in the world now. We each need that inside of ourselves. So many of us I know are feeling exhausted, are working, like navigating big, big things in our lives, and we're navigating um, climate change, like all the social stuff that's going on in our world, the great poverty around the world, the wars that are happening, and that this isn't about, my idea of us reconnecting to our wild and to our pleasure isn't about ignoring or saying those don't things don't exist. It's actually about keeping us resourced, helping us to get full so that we can stay in for the long term. Connecting to your wild is about sustainability. It's about learning how to bring in joy even when you're doing hard things or contemplating hard things. Yeah. Linda, 1 second. Let me turn this off. Linda, that's how my husband structures his time. Just turning this off. Bloop. Tasks before pleasure and often doesn't have time for pleasure, and there's always more tasks. Yeah, there just is. There's always more tasks. And it is an illusion that I think all of us need to start shaking off, that we can get our tasks done and then we're allowed pleasure. Because what I've seen is when you give yourself pleasure, your tasks go more efficiently. You actually get more done, or maybe even not more done. You get things done from a lighter place. So instead of grinding down and pushing and forcing, you're able to bring your full being to what needs to happen. And that's magic. Things start to flow much more fluidly when we reconnect to our pleasure. All right, loves. So again, if you haven't connected, if you haven't signed up for Warrior Goddess Wild, we're on day 1. You can sign up anytime. You can always go back and watch the videos. The videos are available for a week. wildwitchywise.com. wildwitchywise.com. Please join in. I'll share the URL one more time. Yay. And I'll be coming back live in a couple days. As I said earlier, I'm navigating allergies, so my energy is a little bit like flat because of the cedar pollen, which is immense. My gosh, I was driving here today looking at the trees, and the cedar trees are usually green-gray. There are some of them, I don't know if it's all the females or all the males, are all rust right now. It's all pollen, and they're like literally rust colored. So as I was driving here, I was like, oh, hello, cedar, pollen, friends. Ah. So navigating allergies, so much fun. All right. So before we close, I'm just going to hang out for another 10 minutes. And this is really my time to come on and share a little bit of wisdom, to share about Warrior Goddess Wild, and to check in with how are you doing? How is your life? What are you navigating? Where are you struggling? Where do you feel like you're soaring? So let's just hang out, and anything that you want to share, I'd love to hear. Please share in the chat. Hi, Pasquale. Here and now, we need to live by being connected with ourselves every single moment. Yeah, absolutely, Giovanni. And that's a practice. It's a deep practice to come home to ourselves over and over again. So often we have abandoned ourselves and we're living just outside. I think about that when we are young, we're really connected to our spirit, to our being. And then as we get domesticated, we start getting further and further away from that core central channel of who we are. We end up living out here. And out here is the rules, the agreements, who I'm supposed to be, how I'm supposed to be in the world. And coming back in relationship with our wild is really about undoing all that domestication to get back in touch with who we actually are. And not who we've been in the past, but who we are now. And every single moment is so precious. And every moment, even the hard ones, can bring pleasure. And again, my joy of bringing the our connection back to pleasure is really about becoming more fluid, becoming more resilient, really learning how to be fully embodied in this moment and this time. Yeah. That's why. Nice. Gretchen, I love your message. I'm dealing with an amazing daughter that is navigating bipolar. Oh, challenge. Yeah. And how to love her fiercely as she is on her journey, and how to keep yourself sustainable. Because so often, especially when we're taking care of others in whatever form, when we have concerns about others, we can go too far to the side of worry, anxiety, trying to figure out how we can fix or help. And we end up dropping and abandoning ourselves. And so, for all of us to be able to stay sustainable with what's coming and to be able to really be in service to others and to our world, we need to be grounded in presence, to be connected to our just pleasure of being alive, connected to our senses, and to know how to play so that we can keep wiggling our way through the challenges rather than trying to, meet them head on, which we sometimes do, that we learn how to dance and play and sing even to the most difficult challenges. Heather, I struggle with my inner critic. Yes. And your inner critic probably definitely does not want you to have fun. It wants you to be serious. It wants you to do it right. And I think this is so often that inner critic voice, that judge voice, what it is always looking for is what we're doing wrong, and comparing ourselves to others or to what I call this image of perfection. That image of perfection then keeps us from just being in relationship to ourselves. Yeah. So that inner voice of the critic, what we want to learn how to do is witness it with love. To imagine, what is that part of yourself trying to do? Like, sometimes this helps if you realize that part of you is trying to keep you safe. It's trying to navigate a world where it feels out of control. And so sometimes, to be able to think it's like a little kid that's out of control, that's just trying to make things make sense, and you can say, "It's okay. It's okay. I'm bringing my attention here." And it doesn't mean that critic voice is gonna stop completely. It probably won't, but you can literally turn the volume down on that critic and choose where you wanna put your attention. Mhm. Yeah, it's just like a kid. Yeah. And you don't wanna, like, punish the child. It doesn't help to punish that critical voice. How I think about it is that what we're doing in Warrior Goddess Wild is that we're waking up a different part of ourselves that's probably been asleep or that's been buried by the critic. So the critic sometimes gets so loud that we lose connection with that magical child part of ourselves. And that magical child part of ourselves sees the world through wonder and awe and curiosity. And when we can take the critic and say, "Okay, sweetheart, thank you for your opinion, and I'm going to put my attention on this magical child part of myself," you start to see the world through really different eyes. And this critic part's going to try and come back in, and you can know, "No, thank you, I've got it." Sometimes I think that critical part of us needs to know there's an adult in the room that is witnessing and is able to say, "This is what we're going to do." Otherwise, the critic gets louder and louder and louder. Mhm. Sarah, I've gone through a long way since losing my mom. I've gone through a lot of change. I'm still navigating grief, but I'm getting there. Oh, good, sweetheart. Yeah, it's a long journey to get through grief. It is a long journey. So tender with your heart. Yeah. And give yourself permission to also find pleasure in the grief as well. Because when you're grieving well, I've seen, or when you let yourself grieve fully, there's this immense expression of the grief, and then there's love and joy on the other side. It's beautiful. Navigating spring cleaning, sorting through my mom's possessions as she moved into long-term care. Aw. Caring for my daughters who are both going through breakups of relationship. The more I carve out time for me, self-care and self-love, the more I'm able to be present and loving. Beautiful. It's so true. It's so true. And especially when we have multiple things that we're dancing with. So you have daughters, you have your mom, you have all sorts of these places that coming back to ourselves. What do you need, sweetheart? What do you need? Helps us to stay grounded and available for ourselves and for others. We don't take ourselves out of the equation. Yeah, exactly, Sarah. Hi, sweetie. How are you? What do you need? That we bring that compassionate love to ourselves. Hi, sweetie. What do you need? Exactly. Yeah. And that we keep ourselves in the equation, right? Sometimes we're trying to hold everything together and or help others or navigate big changes that other people are going through, and we set ourselves aside in order to do those things, and that will work for a little bit, but it's not sustainable. We have to include ourselves in self-care. We have to include ourselves in healing. We have to include ourselves in compassion. Beautiful. All right, love, thanks for joining me today for our Warrior Goddess Wild Day 1. And please join me in the challenge, wildwitchywise.com. There's no www, just type those words in, wildwitchywise.com. You can join along the journey. I won't be live tomorrow, probably. I may come on live. But I will definitely be live on Thursday. So if you want to come join me then, yeah. And hopefully I won't be quite as foggy from allergies the next time I come on live. All right, blessed ones, take good care of yourself. And today, do something pleasurable. What brings you pleasure? What helps you to show up and come back into relationship with your heart, with compassion, with love, with presence. Yes, and allergies. Bye.